Project some winners.
Wolf, I'm sure a lot of people are asking why, particularly in some of these states that we thought George Bush was comfortably ahead, Mississippi, South Carolina, why we still have not been able to make a call. I'm going to quickly try to get the attention of our political director, Tom Hannon, who's overseeing our election analysis center. Tom, I think I know what you're going to be able to say at this point, but what can we tell our viewers about those states that we still can't call, especially those states where we thought there was a larger margin?
Well, I mean, in any of these states at this point, we're just going to wait for more information. Right now, we're operating almost entirely off of exit poll responses, which serve us well in races where there's a wider margin. But I don't know if you can get around and see this, but see this TC here?
Yes.
That's their language for saying that this is too close to call based on the information now. Now, we don't think it's going to be necessarily a close race, but we're saying that right now, we don't have enough information to make a call there.
All right, and that's the state of Florida, which we knew was going to be close. Tom, just quickly, what about a state like South Carolina? The polls closed an hour ago.
Right, we're still looking at the vote in South Carolina. We want to make sure that we're not seeing some biases in the exit poll. It's not a character. I wouldn't characterize it as a state that's going to have a close outcome at the end of the night necessarily. But right now, we just don't have enough information.
And what about the state of Virginia, where the polls were a little
all
closer?
Of these are the same.
Okay.
The same.
All right.
Same answer.
All right. We'll let you go right back to work. Tom Hannon, of course, Wolf, our political director, and they're trying their best to get all this information in. But as you know, as we've been saying for days now, we don't want to jump the gun. We're not going to make any projections until we are entirely comfortable with them, even though it may seem conservative to some people out there who think, gee, you know, South Carolina, that's surely going to be a Bush state. We're not going to jump to any conclusions.
But once, Judy, we get these raw numbers coming in through the Associated Press, presumably we'll have more information, and at some point we might be able to make projections in those states like Florida and Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, key battleground states.
That's right. As what we're doing is we are layering information from those exit polls that have been coming in all day long, the sample precinct information that we're getting from about 3,000 precincts around the country, and then, as you just said, the actual raw vote. We are going to be looking at that. Our statisticians, our election analysts, all the people you see sitting around these computers right here at our Election Analysis Center, part of CNN's offices in the Time Warner Center right here in Manhattan. They are looking at all this information, and at some point there will be enough, either through the sample precincts, combination of that with the raw vote, to make them comfortable. But as you just heard Tom Hannon say, we're not there yet. And if there are any anomalies in those numbers, I mean, we all know there's been a lot of discussion this year, Wolf and Jeff, about the public opinion polls. We've seen them. It seems like they've been all over the map, and we're not taking any chances because it may be that the models that were used in some of those polls were a little bit off. We don't know. And so we're just being extra cautious.
All right, Judy, what if we see a lot of those experts sitting behind you, drinking a lot of coffee? They're going to have a long night. We're going to have a long night as well. Stay with us. To our viewers, stay with us as well. Anderson Cooper is watching some key Senate races. What have we learned, Anderson?
Wolf, we can now project a winner, of course, in the race in Illinois. Not a great surprise. Democrat Barack Obama is the projected winner in the state of Illinois. Again, this is widely expected. He ran against Alan Keyes, who was really at no point during this race any great threat to him. Alan Keyes came under some criticism for comments he made about Mary Cheney, but he really never got any traction in this race. Barack Obama, rising star in the Democratic Party. He is on his way to the United States Senate, and he has actually, Wolf, and what's interesting about this race is he has actually gone out and campaigned for a lot of other candidates around the country. Just this last weekend, he was campaigning in Kentucky for Dan Monjardo, who's running in a very contentious race against Jim Bunning. So Barack Obama, as we said, a rising star in the party, and he is now on his way to Washington, D.C. He is the projected winner tonight. Wolf?
All right, you want to make a point about Barack Obama?
This is the first Democratic pickup. This is an open Senate seat of the retiring Republican Senator Fitzgerald. It was never in doubt, but as we look to see the balance of power that you'll be telling us about all night, with a Georgia pickup for the Republicans we've already called, now we're back to square one.
And we should point out to viewers who haven't been following this as closely, in order for the Democrats to take control of the Senate, they would need to pick up 2 seats. That's if George Bush stays in office. If John Kerry stays in office, they need a net pickup of 1 seat. So at this point, Barack Obama picks up 1 seat. But as Jeff mentioned, you have Johnny Isakson picking up 1 seat for the Republicans from Fritz Holling's old seat. So at this point, there is from Zell Miller's seat in Georgia. So at this point, there is no net gain.
All right, Anderson Cooper, thanks very much. And the reason they would only need one seat, the Democrats, if John Kerry's elected president, that's because John Edwards would become the vice president of the United States. And by definition, he's the president of the Senate. He'd be able to break a tie. That's why they would only need one seat. Bill Schneider is looking at exit polls, as he always does for us. What else have we learned, Bill?
We've learned something very interesting about New Jersey, Wolf. New Jersey lost the second largest number of people on September 11th, and 3/4 of the voters there said they are worried about another terrorist attack on the United States. But New Jersey voted for John Kerry. Let's take a look at those voters in New Jersey who said they're worried about another terrorist attack. And look at this. 55%, a majority of those voters worried about another terrorist attack, are voting for John Kerry, only 43% for George Bush. That's got to be a big disappointment for the White House. And do they trust Bush to handle the terrorist issue? Let's look at what New Jersey voters said. That was about an even split. 47% said no, 46% said yes. They are divided on whether they trust Bush on the terrorism issue. So this was a big blow to Bush that he didn't do better in New Jersey, a state where terrorism was the #1 issue of concern to voters.
Bill, is that, would you say, so far, the surprise of the night, the early call on Jersey?
Yeah, New Jersey was supposed to be a more competitive state. Republicans had some hope there. It's a state that historically has voted Democratic, but Republicans felt, after the September 11th attacks, they had a real chance in New Jersey. But look at this. Even those who are concerned about terrorism were voting for John Kerry.
And the president did go to Jersey.
He did go to deliver that major foreign policy speech only a few weeks ago, although it was in southern New Jersey near the Philadelphia television market, so he knew he would get a lot of pickup in a much more important state for the Republicans. At least the hope was for Pennsylvania.
With a little over an hour, what's surprising, Jeff?
Actually, not much, because every state that we've called so far is in line with 2000. I think you've actually put your finger on it. The fact that New Jersey went this early, given so many pre-election polls that had it 2 or 3 points, a lot of us were scratching our heads saying, this is a state that's been comfortably Democratic for 12 years. What's going on? Well, apparently not much, except the pollsters were talking to the wrong people.
We can't draw too much. Again, we're being cautious about our calls, but I will be interested to watch and see what happens in North Carolina. That early on, when John Edwards was picked as the nominee, first nominee on either portion of the ticket since the mid-1800s. People thought it might become competitive. The polls later on showed the president reopening up a lead. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
What about the Senate race there?
I think the Senate race, one of the interesting things about that Senate race there, where you have former President Clinton's former chief of staff, Erskine Bowles, running against a Congressman, Richard Burr, there, is that it's another one of these places where the presidential race seemed to have opened up, but the Senate race remained very close. You saw the same thing, for example, in a place like Ohio. You had a close presidential race, but the Senate race seemed to open up. So it's interesting. You're not seeing the dovetail between Senate races and presidential races that you've seen in the past.
It's very interesting also, Larry, that the Democrats, the Kerry campaign never gave up on North Carolina. They never pulled their staff out of North Carolina like they did other states that they once thought they might have a shot in, like Missouri, for example, or Virginia. They never left North Carolina, I think in part because of the impact it could have on Erskine Bowles, the Democratic Senate candidate, and also in part because they didn't want to embarrass John Edwards, who's the vice presidential nominee.
What is the rule of people online? If you're online, do you vote? They're reporting that they may be open in Toledo till midnight.
Generally speaking, if you're online, you get to vote. I mean, the states run this.
So when the precinct closes, does someone come and put a rope? So if you show up at 5 after 8, you don't vote?
That's right.
Yep.
It's like
if you had to be there before
you had to be there and
right.
online.
Right.
Although every state, and Jeff, I think you'll agree, they have their own rules, they have their own regulations, and precincts may have their own rules as well. So
I could let you vote, and he may not let you.
That's right.
And sometimes you'll have 4 years ago there were big court fights in Missouri about whether the polls in St. Louis should stay open. Is it legal or not? One quick point: in most of the competitive Senate races, with the exception of Colorado and Florida, the Democrats are under this big disadvantage. They're running in deep crimson red states, and those Senate candidates, including Senate Minority Leader Daschle, have to overcome a top-of-the-ticket spread that could be as much as 20, 25 points. That's a difficult problem.
Carlos, let's get back to New Jersey for a minute, because as Larry King accurately points out, this is the first major state that has we've been able to project a win for John Kerry. New Jersey, so many of the 500 residents of New Jersey were killed in the World Trade Center bombing. There was a sense the Republicans had that Perhaps they had a shot there a few weeks ago, but something changed.
Or were the polls wrong? I mean, one of the things that Jeff and I have discussed a number of times, one of the things that obviously our viewers out there are wondering about are all these polls that constantly showed close contest. And by the time we get to the end of the night, will we be surprised that so many places we thought were going to be tight weren't?
Were we fooled by the governor having to resign?
I don't know if that had a direct impact. What do you think?
I think initially there was some thought that it did, that controversy might have caused people to sour a little bit on Democrats generally. But, you know, given that we called it this early on, boy, that's meaningfully good news for John Kerry there. I think, by the way, West Virginia was similarly good news for the president that we called it that quickly.
Let me just try on our humility hat. We don't know why the pre-election polls in New Jersey called a close race when it apparently hasn't. I think the phrase "we don't know" may be useful as we get through the rest of the night after 4 years.
Although I will point out in defense of the pollsters that in the most recent polls over the last few days, we did see a growing gap in favor of John Kerry in New Jersey. In fairness to all those hardworking pollsters who make these phone calls and get this information, easy to deride them. Let's bring in two of the finest political reporters out there. John King is over at the White House. Candy Crowley is in Boston. First to you, John. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, first let me say election night here at the White House is a Bush family reunion. The former president is here, the current president's brothers, other family members. We have Karl Rove set up as the go-between, if you will. He's in the old family dining room in the residence behind me watching results, also shuttling back to the Roosevelt room where other senior staffers are watching on several walls of television screens, tracking the results, working the telephones, trying to talk to people around the country. They insist here that their turnout operation in Ohio and elsewhere is doing quite well. They say wait for the votes to be counted. One quick word on what you were just discussing about New Jersey. Nobody here at the White House ever expected to win New Jersey. What they hoped to do by going to that Philadelphia market, as you noted, was get some airtime in Pennsylvania, perhaps convince the Democrats to put some late time, effort, and money into New Jersey. The Democrats didn't take the bait. It is not a state the president expected to win. He did hope to force John Kerry to spend more time and money there. He failed in that regard, and obviously that state goes Democrat tonight.
So, John, the whole family, the Bush family, is basically behind you in the residence at the White House right now watching television, we presume.
That is right, watching the results, and it's a great irony here. Step back for just a minute. It was 12 years ago when this president's father found out he would be a one-term president. This president campaigned aggressively. He said today that he was content with the campaign he had run, win or lose. He said he expected to win, but one of the Democratic rallying cries, if you will, in this election was, like father, like son, 4 years, he's done. This President Bush finding out tonight if he will get a second term, unlike his father, or if he will suffer the same fate.
I know Larry wants to talk to you, John, as well. Go ahead before we bring in Candy Crowley.
Just one thing, John. Jeb Bush was on our show last night. He's not there. He said he was going to stay in Florida.
Because of all the questions about whether his state would have a rerun of 4 years ago, Jeb Bush thought it was best that he stay home, keep his eye on the vote count.
He's the only one not there, right?
Not here. Jeb is not here.
He was a no-show at the Republican convention, also, as our viewers remember, because there were hurricanes. I believe there were 4 hurricanes in Florida that preoccupied him. Let's bring in Candy Crowley. She's in Boston at the Kerry campaign headquarters. What's the mood over there, Candy, at this hour? It's about 8:17, 8:18 on the East Coast.
Well, I can tell you right now they have CNN on, so the crowd that has started to gather here, you are hearing cheer. Look, the senator actually just finished campaigning about half an hour ago. He spent almost 4 hours satelliting in interviews where his ground troops told him that, in fact, an interview might help. So usual suspects, Ohio, Florida, places like that. John Kerry's been doing interviews for 4 hours. Now he's over at his house having some dinner. Let me add to the New Jersey discussion and just tell you that the reason the Democrats didn't fall for what looked like a George Bush play for New Jersey is that they had internal polls showing them that New Jersey wasn't that close. They said, in fact, you all have just seen a head fake, referring to the president. They knew he was looking at that Pennsylvania market. They never thought that New Jersey was much in play.
Larry, you want to talk to Candy?
Candace, would you call the mood there upbeat? Are they excited by what they see so far?
Up upbeat is okay. Well, you're talking about the crowd because I think you can hear them. If you're talking about
No, I'm
the
talking
Kerry
about the
people,
Kerrys.
yes, absolutely. Look, they are seeing the kinds of things come in that, in fact, we are seeing. They feel good about it, but they felt good about it for the past week. What they are keying on now is the turnout and the reports of the turnout. Obviously, we don't have numbers, but they see the long lines.